Welcome back to Straight Fire, one of the most prominent voices in college basketball. Been covering the sport for, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 years. I mean, he's been at all the big shops. Now he's got his own. No boss to answer to. Field of 68. Jeff Goodman. How are you, man?
Man, it's good to see you. It's been
Yeah.
way too long. It is good to see you. It's been, listen, it's been a blast to say I knew you when. I knew you when. Nobody knew you, right? Can I say that?
Well, I've known you for a long time because I'm a college basketball nerd, and
You
I would
are.
always just pepper him with questions. He's probably like, "Who's this annoying guy
No, I
just
loved you.
asking me stuff?" And I mean, you're at the top of the food chain there. You know everything about the sport. So I figured, I love March Madness. Conference championship week starts. Well, the JV week is this week, and then the big one's next week, and then the tournament, obviously. But we do a lot of gambling on the pod, and you guys talk a lot of gambling. So I mean, for the first time in I guess 3 years, it's kind of going to be wide open. The last 2 years were the UConn Invitational, right? And then this year, I mean, I guess you could say Duke and Auburn are favorites, but it's not like UConn last year or the last 2 years, right?
That's right. No, I mean, Auburn's been surprisingly dominant all year because nobody saw this coming. Bruce Pearl included. He didn't know they'd be this good. But, it's a combination, right, of the pieces fitting together. And the chemistry is unbelievable. I was down there a week or so ago, and I did a TV interview that'll air on CBS Final Four weekend. I did it with Janai Broom, 22-year-old Player of the Year candidate, fifth-year senior, Tahad Pettiford, freshman,
That guy's
five-star
nice.
freshman,
He's
and,
amazing.
and Miles Kelly. And the three of them are sitting there, and I'm not kidding. It was my favorite interview I've done in 10 years because all they did was shit on each other. I mean, Pettiford killed Janai, killed him. The 18-year-old freshman is killing the 22-year-old fifth-year senior, and Broom loves it, loves it. So, like, you can just tell, and that's hard these days because they've been playing together for, what, 8 months, all three of them?
Yeah.
So, like, it's everything together. And Bruce Pearl, listen, you could say what you want about Bruce Pearl. He is a master motivator. He is so good with people and kids and everybody. That I just think Auburn, they've got the whole package. And listen, what they've done again, the quad one wins is out of control this year. Duke's great because Cooper's better than I thought he'd be. And I'd seen him 40 times in AAU ball. And he's even better, Jason, because he's all about winning. I mean, when you saw him in AAU ball, he took a team from Maine and took him deep in every AAU tournament. Maine. I mean, there's a team for Maine. Maine has no players ever.
Nobody.
They don't have players. So, right there, you knew he's loyal, number one. And he always just played hard all the time. And his IQ is off the charts. And he guards. And he doesn't want to, he wants to just be one of the guys, which, again, that's part of the deal. He hasn't done one-on-one interview all year in the season. Only
Really?
post-game stuff. Post-game, he's fine. But, we've asked for it, and other people have, and no, he just wants to be one. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kawhi in that regard, because Kawhi just wanted to do his thing, and I know Kawhi gets a bad rap now from at least a certain guy who I think is out of control with how he kills him. Well, he just doesn't know him. I think Stephen A's problem is he doesn't know Kawhi because Kawhi doesn't give a shit about the media,
Right. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of Kawhi. Right, Kawhi played harder than everybody when he was on the court, when he was healthy. Cooper Flagg plays so goddamn hard
Yeah.
every possession. So those two are probably a notch above everybody because of what they've done over the course of the season. But it's also hard to evaluate Duke in ACC play because the league stinks.
Brutal year for the ACC. Let's go back to Auburn for a sec. So, obviously, you tinker around on some of these sites, and I'm looking at the Auburn starting five, and essentially for the guys are transfers. You got Baker Mazzara, who's 25 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, the modern team is super interesting now because, like you said, Pettiford, who's one of my favorite players in college hoops, I know he's only a freshman, but I think he gave 20 or more to Houston, Duke, Kentucky, all the good teams they play. He's really nice. But the way these teams are built is just a hodgepodge of veterans, right? That's the way to succeed now.
Yeah, I think Villanova started that a little bit, right? When Jay Wright was winning titles, everybody kind of went to that model. And it went even further when you had the extra COVID year. Everybody saying, okay, this is our advantage, right? in the last couple of years, the freshman classes have been atrocious overall. This year's is obviously much better, but you look at it and you still say, okay, Cooper Flagg, number one, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, 2 and 3. They're not making the tournament.
Yeah.
Trey Johnson's in there. VJ Edgecombe, they're both barely making the tournament if they do. So, like, Cooper Flagg is the outlier here, and there's a reason he's the outlier, just because, again, it's funny because going into the year, everybody asked me, everybody's like, can he be a guy you build your NBA team around? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think he's clearly a number 2 guy. And now I don't know if you can win a championship with him as your number 1, but I'm not saying no anymore. I'm not saying no. I think you can build your franchise around Cooper Flagg, absolutely, if you have the right pieces around him.
Well, that's a real tough discussion because, frankly, when Jokic was drafted, could you build a franchise around him? Hell no. Giannis, same deal. Steph Curry, no way. I mean, other than LeBron,
but we didn't know a lot. We didn't know a lot about the Joker or Giannis at that point. And Steph, the questions were there, right? Like, look at him. Yeah. Can he guard anybody? Can he play the point? Look at his body. Like, there were a lot with this kid. You're like, he's got the body. He's got the IQ. He's proven it at the highest level he started as a 17-year-old freshman. 17. Wasn't reclassified like a lot of these kids. So there's a lot more that we know about Cooper that you want to pick apart. Like, how much have you heard anybody pick anything apart? More, it's usually the more you see these kids, the more we want to tear them down. I know that's like the NBA deal right now, and I don't want to get into that. But
ugly.
But you can't pick Cooper apart. What are you gonna say negatively?
He's hitting 38% on threes.
Right.
Like
exactly.
That's 82% from the line. He's amazing. Here, the one question I asked was, so Jeff, when Zion hit Duke, it was like, oh my gosh, Zion's totally dominant. Yes. I feel like we should have had that for Cooper Flagg, but we don't. Is this about swag and ridiculous dunking and breaking out of shoes? Because Cooper Flagg's been kind of sort of as good as Zion, no?
I don't think ESPN did a good job in the preseason because they're the ones who drive this. Let's face it. They are the ones who drive it. And I don't think they did as good a job because I remember being in those meetings, those preseason meetings at ESPN, even when Ben Simmons was coming in LSU.
Oh, LSU. Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. We're going to hammer this home. We are going to honestly make people, hate this kid because they're going to hear about him so much. And Cooper, first of all, he's not unlikable like your normal white Duke player. He's not.
Leitner, yeah.
He's not. Like, Leitner had the facial expressions.
The stomp.
Yeah. He was a dick. JJ Redick was a dick.
He was. He would admit that too. Yeah.
Cooper is not that. He kind of keeps the same expression in his face, doesn't talk shit really. So he's hard to dislike. It'll be interesting to see in the NCAA tournament if they go deep and the world catches on to who the hell Cooper Flagg is. Does he become unlikable?
You don't think they were the Final Four borderline lock?
No, I do. Oh, okay. I do. I actually think Duke is more of a lock than Auburn.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a good analysis. Let me ask you about this Florida team. So I keep betting against them, keep losing. I know Todd Golden went through some sort of scandal earlier this year. Or maybe it was his assistant, but there was some stuff.
Title IX. No, it was a Title IX thing that he was completely cleared of that I know a lot more than I can say.
Wait. Was he the one sliding in DMs of girls allegedly?
Alleged.
And he was cleared of all that?
He was cleared of most of it. He was cleared of the Title IX investigation. I don't know if he slid in some DMs.
I mean, these women were posting, like college kids were posting stuff. And I thought like, oh, they're going to go sideways. And I mean, they've been amazing. They're on a run right now this season. The last 25 games, they've covered 20. That's like unheard of. They're totally dominant. The only thing that has me off on them, and again, this is my small thing, is the free throw shooting. And I cannot stand betting on teams that can't shoot free throws in March because the whistles, the fouls. What do you think of this Florida team?
And the guards are awesome.
Yeah.
Like I remember when they got Elijah Martin from FAU. He was so bad, not bad last year, but 2 years ago, obviously they went to the Final Four.
That's right.
Him and Nelly Davis, and he was great. And then last year, he just didn't look like himself. And I think part of it was just a Nelly Davis dominated team, and Elijah didn't know where he fit. He's been awesome at Florida. Alex Condon, forward, has been phenomenal. Their guards, There are 3 or 4 guards. They've actually got 4. This kid, Denzel Aberdeen, comes off the bench, and he played when Elijah was hurt. But Walter Clayton Jr. from Iona chose to go to Florida instead of following Rick Pitino. Imagine if he was at St. John's.
Oh
Imagine.
boy.
Because
Yeah, we'll
he's a
get to see.
first-team All-American, in my opinion, Walter Clayton.
Clayton?
Oh, yeah. He's that good. He's
Wow.
been that good this year. Yeah. So him, Elijah Martin, Will Richard. Will Richard came from Belmont. So those 3 kids, think about that. Iona, FAU, which is a mid-major. I know we don't want to say that because they went to the Final Four, but if you go down to FAU's gym, you'll say like, yeah, this is a true mid-major. I was just down there last week, and Belmont. And again, you look at, they don't have, I think they have one 4 or 5-star kid on their whole roster. So they've done a great job evaluating and again, getting old, and their pieces fit together so well.
Yeah.
The only question I have, the bigger one than the free throw shooting, is like, yeah, Ty Golden in a big moment, like he's unproven going up against, the Bruce Pearls of the world, the Nate Oates of the world. Now he's done it in SEC play, but it's a different ball game in the NCAA tournament.
You mentioned Nate Oates. Alabama, I tweeted this and all these Alabama fans got pissed at me. Did they peak too early? They've lost 2 straight. Now in the SEC, that's not the worst thing in the world. You're losing to Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, but they lost 4 of 6 here. They have to face Auburn again Saturday. So, you don't want to go into the NCAA tournament or even the conference tournament kind of sliding like this. What do you think's wrong with Nate Oates' team?
They're not as good a shooting team as we thought. They lost the kid Latrell Wrightsell back in November. He was one of their better shooters. Their pieces don't fit quite as well because they brought in the big transfer from Rutgers, Cliff Amori, and he really doesn't fit the way they play. They need a big. They needed a big and a rim protector, but they needed like a skilled, guy on the offensive end because of the way Alabama plays. They got to have somebody that can make some shots, and Cliff just doesn't give him anything on offense, so it's like hard to play him. And Mark Sears, to me, is the guy that he took him to the Final Four last year. A very underwhelming team, talent-wise, I think, a year ago. They're more talented this year. They also have Darian Reed, who's going to be a first-round pick, who's been out for the last month and a half, who's their most versatile player. But
is he going to be back?
Yeah, I think so. I got to find out what the update is with him. But I think it's Sears. It's been a roller coaster ride, and he hasn't become the leader that Nate Oates was hoping. He's benched him a couple times this year. He can be dominant. Yeah. I mean, he can be so good when he wants to be, getting in the lane, scoring, making life easier for his teammates, and then sometimes he can look like selfish.
Yes, very selfish. Yeah. Let me ask you about Grant Nelson. He kind of blew up in the NCAA tournament last year. I thought he would try to go to the league. He has some characteristics, length, can step out and shoot it, though he's not shooting it well this year. Where are you on this kid, Nelson?
Yeah, not a great shooter. Not a great shooter. That's what's holding him back. That's why he didn't go last year. Again, and thin. And if you're not a great shooter, he's a good athlete, really, really good athlete. Came from mid-major in the Summit League. He's from Dakota. But I think, again, their piece is just like they should be better. Even you watched them last week, right? And they give the ball at the end of the game to the freshman, LeBaron Philon, and he has a 5-second call on one play. Then he doesn't get the ball to Sears on another play. Then he drives in. I feel like Nate doesn't really know who they are yet, and we're so late in the game. That's not a good thing.
So we haven't talked a lot about the ACC other than your little dig that they're down. I mean, they've got, 17 teams and only 3 are good. North Carolina is probably not going to get in. What do you think about Clemson?
Underrated. Really, really, really underrated.
They were a hot team for me last year. I liked them going into the tournament, and I like the kid Brownwell, the coach. He's good.
Brad Brunell's really good.
He's done
a great job. Yeah. And he kind of lived his life in the hot seat for the longest time. He could be – there's a chance with what's going on in Indiana. So I don't know if you want me to go on a tangent here.
Go for it. I don't know what's going on in Indiana because I don't pay attention to crap teams.
Yeah. Indiana, obviously, Mike Woodson, crazy. I pay attention to this one even more because my daughter's a junior at Indiana. So I'm sinking $50,000 in a year to her education. Wow. So I care.
50.
50, Indiana. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Wait, how old are your kids now?
Nah, they're middle school, so we're not quite there yet. But
You got to be
I
there.
guess I got to
Just
start
wait.
putting some money aside. Holy
You
cow!
definitely do. Definitely don't spend it all gambling. All right.
No, no, definitely
So they Woodson, he's out, a month and a half ago, whatever. Um, they've rebounded. They've actually played well lately. They're probably right on the bubble, which would be a crazy thing if they basically got him, to say he's stepping down. He didn't really want to step down.
not. Oh, you think they shoved him out?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
He
damn!
didn't,
Yeah, I didn't follow it closely.
yeah, he didn't want to go. So anyway, so it's open now, and Indiana fans think they're going to get, at first it was Brad Stevens,
Oh, come on!
who crazy. Brad, this shows you how much Brad's changed. So Brad, years ago, was the biggest, and I've known him since he was an assistant at Butler. But when he becomes a head coach at Butler, Brad is the ultimate rules guy. He'll never break a rule, ever break a rule. Like, I get out of my car in Vegas at an AU event. He gets out of his car at the same time. It's in the morning in a gym watching recruits, and they had gotten a commitment from a kid that morning. And I'm just making small talk at that point. I'm like, hey, Brad, who'd you get? Who's this kid you got? He's like, Jeff, I can't comment on him. I'm like, Brad, it's just you and me here in the friggin' parking lot. Like, dude, I'm making small talk here. Well, Brad, who never comments really on anything, the Indiana stuff, it started to percolate a little bit, and all these fans think they're getting Brad. So I texted him and called him, and he put out a statement saying, like, no, I'm happy here. Like, I'm not, and
I'm leaving a dynasty in the NBA for Indiana. No.
And nobody is going back right now to college to coach in this climate of where it's a complete mess with NIL, with the portal, all that, when you could get a job in the NBA whenever he wanted. If Brad Stevens says tomorrow, I want to be the head coach in the NBA, he'll get 5 teams. Every opening this year, we'll call him. Every opening. So anyway, Indiana, sorry. Brad Stevens, no. Dusty May, no. He went to Indiana. He was a manager. He decides he's staying at Michigan because it fits him better. So this thing could fall. I've said they should go after Iowa State head coach TJ Otzelberger. I don't think he'd take it at the end of the day. I don't think Scott Drew will take it at Baylor. He turned down Kentucky a year ago. So I think you could get down to where you're talking Brad Brunell from Clemson legitimately being in the mix, or a Ben McCullum, a first-year head coach who was in the D2 ranks, who just won the Missouri Valley at Drake in his first season. Those guys could be in the mix at Indiana because guys aren't moving, Jason. They're not moving because they've got big contracts. If they like their ADs, they're not uprooting their family. As long as they got NIL, they're not going to move.
Yeah. He's been there at Clemson for 15 years. Now, again, I don't know what his family situation is, kids. Like, that's tough to bail after 15 years. You got to really want to be in Bloomington, no?
And his AD has been very loyal to him at Clemson.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, his AD, legitimately young AD named Graham Neff, said to him before the year, he said, listen, this is a make or break year. If you make the tournament, well, you're staying. If you don't make the NCAA tournament, this is it. He didn't make it. They ended up going to the NIT, and Graham kept him because he said, like, we're still drawing well attendance-wise. He's a great dude. And part of it is, too, you keep your nose clean at Clemson in basketball. Make sure, because you got to protect football.
Yeah, that's obviously top thing. Interesting that you mentioned the guy at Drake. So he just got there, brings all of his dudes, and they're one of the best stories of college basketball, right?
Oh, I saw them 3 times in Charleston in November. They've got a point guard. You got to watch this kid.
Yeah.
You, as a huge basketball fan of
the
playing the
kid.
right way. This kid's name is Bennett Sturtz.
Yep.
He is a stud. He is like a big point guard who's not going to blow you away with athleticism or anything like that. Again, he had one scholarship, and it was to Northwest Missouri State coming out.
What is that, D2 or 3?
Two.
Okay.
So they go there, and he brings his entire starting 5, other than their leading scorer who exhausted his eligibility last year. He brings the other 4 guys with him to Drake, and everybody's like, well, how good can they be? I mean, 4 D2 players. Yeah, like it's going to be a big-time rebuilding year at Drake after Darian DeVries, was dominant the last couple of years with his son Tucker. And they go out there, and I'm telling you, when I saw them they beat Vandy in Charleston, and I'm like, this team is for real. Like, they play such a fun brand of basketball. And this kid starts, I hope he decides to stay. But if he goes in the portal,
Wait, why would he go in the portal? Oh, you think he could play at
anywhere.
like North Carolina or something?
I mean, he could play anywhere. Like
Wow.
legitimately, Jason. Like
So,
he, these guys were getting these big men were getting $2 million this past offseason. Great Osibor at Washington, Coleman Hawkins at Kansas State. Like if I'm paying somebody $2 million next year, I'm paying Bennett Sturts
Coleman
$2 million.
Hawkins got 2 mil. Now, is that rumor or fact?
A combination. A
Okay,
combination.
yeah, 2 mil
I
seems like a
know.
lot
I
for
know
a
it's right
stretch
there.
four.
Yeah, it's right there in that $2 million range.
Okay. Let me ask about Drake because I'm like kind of interested in betting on them because of this story,
Yep.
but they've played a lot of overtime games against, and they haven't really, they're not clobbering some of these bad teams, and they haven't stepped up in class really. It looks like their best win was against Kansas State, which is kind of rivalry, and the Vandy win was good, but it was November. Can they make a run to like the Sweet 16, or are they potentially getting knocked off?
Yeah, I mean, I love them, so I want to say yes. I
Okay.
want to say yes in the worst way, but I'm also kind of realistic here that they haven't played great in the Valley. They've been, very good, but they've had their stumbling blocks. They're not overpowering. That's the problem. They're not big. They're not super athletic. But man, I'll be rooting for them. I wouldn't say. I'd say if they can get a win, if they get one win in the NCAA tournament, that would be a hell of a year.
So you mentioned St. John's earlier. They're one of the best stories in the sport. Obviously, Rick Pitino, a genius, comes back. They're number 2 defensively. This is probably the best team since. Didn't they have a guy named Thornton? Was it Bootsy Thornton?
Yeah. They just haven't been good in years. I mean,
Yeah,
the last time they were this good, you're talking about like Chris Mullen playing for them.
1985 or something.
That's the last time they were like, yes, this good. I
Damn.
mean, this relevant, right? They're top 10. I went a week and a half ago when at the Garden. It was the weekend of Duke played Illinois and beat the crap out of them. And then the next day, Patino beat UConn and Dan Hurley. And listen, right now, Patino's running the Big East. I mean, he's absolutely in year 2 at 72 years old or whatever he is. He does not look or act like a guy in his 70s. Some coaches look and act older, and especially when I deal with these guys, you can sense it. Rick Pitino does not seem like he's aged a bit in the last 10 years, especially with how on top of things he is. I mean, he's got these guys believing like we win games with our defense.
Yeah.
And I talked to Russ Smith, who played for him at Louisville years
Is that the
ago.
guy who broke his leg?
What's that?
Is Russ Smith the one who broke his leg in the NCAA tournament?
No, that's Kevin Ware.
Kevin
Russ
Ware.
Smith was the super fun
bucket. He was like
from
35 against Michigan or something in the tournament.
He just went off. And Russ made a good point. He goes, I know they're not a great shooting team. He goes, we weren't a great shooting team when we won it all and went to the Final Four. But as the year went on, we figured out because we played so hard defensively because you had no choice that your legs weren't there, right? You had to figure out how to play that level of defense and still have your legs and still be able to make threes and make shots. And he said, I think at the end of the year here, you're starting to see St. John's shoot it much better, which they did. The first half of the UConn game, they were like 8 of 16.
Yes. But Jeff, per Ken Palm, they're 337th in 3-point shooting. That's out of like 360, I think.
It's amazing. No,
and in
amazing.
free throw shooting, they're 300. That stuff concerns me. Plus, you never know. March Madness, you get a tight whistle. All of a sudden, you got dudes in foul trouble.
Sweet 16, again. Sweet 16, I'm fine with.
That would be huge. Yeah.
I don't think they go further than that.
All right. Is there a sleeper outside of, say, the top 25? I guess you could put UConn in that territory. Could they be a sleeper, or they just don't have it this year?
No, they could. I don't think they can win the whole thing again. I don't think they can do the three-peat again. Yeah. But I certainly think, Alex Caravan looks more like Alex Caravan than he has in the last few games. His confidence is back at this point. Liam McNeely's awesome as a freshman. Their depth isn't there.
I got to ask about a certain player. So Aiden Mahaney, I saw him here on the West Coast. Yeah. He started starring at St. Mary's. I'm like, oh, well, what a get by UConn. And he barely plays. I don't get it. Does Hurley hate him? Is it the lack of defense? Because nobody on that team plays defense. I don't even think they're top 100 defensively.
Horrible fit. Like you need the right type of personality and player for Dan Hurley. You know that. I mean, you could see.
Hurley's going to ride you, and he can't handle it.
Yeah, that's just not what he is, right? And the other part is he can't get by dudes. Not only can he not guard really at a high level, but he can't get by dudes in the Big East. He should have stayed in the WCC. Think about it. It's the perfect league for somebody that's not a great athlete.
So where do you think he'll leave and go somewhere?
I would think. I mean, why would you stay there?
Yeah, that's a bummer. I mean, I love that guy's game in the WCC.
Yep.
You're right. And total another story. So anyway, sorry to interrupt. UConn could be a sleeper. Anyone else?
Trying to think who else could be a sleeper. I like St. Mary's. I mean, I think they're at the end of the top 25 right now. I just think Randy Bennett's one of the elite coaches in the game. I mean, he's so good. If you've got if you get a chance, and I know you're not close, but if you ever get a chance, go to a Randy Bennett practice, man. It's like a complete clinic.
And they got Marcelonis' son on that team. He's dominant.
He's really good. Augustus. Yeah, Augustus is really good. They got a veteran big and Mitchell Saxon. I think, again, to me, there'll be some surprises, I think, to get to like the Sweet 16. There'll be some upsets. But I think this year, I just don't see a lot of like party crashers like FAU was a few years ago to the Final Four. I'd be surprised if that's the case.
You're plugged in on the coaching stuff. Is Hubert Davis getting run? And if so, who's replacing him?
Yeah, he'll get one more year. He just brought in Jim Tanner, the former NBA agent, as general manager. Buzz Peterson will come back in a role. They'll change out their staff. They'll have staff changes. That'll be basically what the AD, Bubba Cunningham, will say to Hubert. Hey, you want to stick around for another year, you got to make some changes here. The crazy part is, think about this. As of 7 days ago, in 3 of the 4 years Hubert Davis has been the head coach, and I'm not counting March. I think it was March 1st. The first year he beat Coach K. Remember, they were on the bubble, and then they beat Coach K on Coach K night, his final regular season
game. That's right. Yeah.
And that's when they went on that crazy run to the title game, right? But they're on the bubble right before that. Then year 2, they don't make the tournament. Year 3 last year, they're really good. They win the league and they go to the Sweet 16. And year 4 again, they're back in the bubble. So 3 of the 4 years entering March 1st, they're on the bubble. That is not good enough at North Carolina. He'll get one more year, and if he doesn't get to the tournament next year, he's
done. Is there an NC State out there we need to be on the lookout for?
There's never going to be another NC State, Jason.
That was fluky.
There's never going to be another NC State. That's the craziest part of what happened. It came out of absolutely. Well, I don't want to say that because years ago, if you remember this one, SEC tournament in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome years ago, there was a tornado that hit. And they had to move it to Georgia Tech. And it was actually really cool in a way, not cool about the tornado. But only friends, family, and some media were allowed in to watch that thing. And Georgia, Dennis Felton was the head coach back then. He was going to be fired. And they went on this run. They won 5 games in 4 days. They played 2 games in a day to win the SEC tournament and save his job. So crazier things have happened, but you can't even predict anything like what happened with NC State.
Yeah. I'll close out BYU.
Like could Villanova has the talent, Jason. They got maybe one of the top 10 players in the country in Eric Dixon. We just don't trust right now Villanova as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, we know some tried and true things in March. You need great guard play. Are you buying Perkins and Brickus?
And Poplar. Yeah, Poplar's he was good for a stretch there. But no, I don't think there's any consistency to that Villanova team that they can run off, 3 or 4 games in conference play.
Yeah, it's tough to make one of those deep runs like out of nowhere. Like Kansas State had the little guard who was amazing.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I can't believe I'm spacing his name. He lit up the garden. He was amazing.
Yeah, I know he.
And like you just need like one of those kind of performances to carry you. But
Kemba, look at Kemba
Kemba Walker. There you go.
When he carried him not only the NCAA title but the Big East title. I mean, that was 11 straight wins riding Kemba Walker's back. It was crazy. Yeah.
So the last question is: this finally the year for Kelvin Sampson? They got close a few years ago. They've been upset in each of the last 2 years, I think in the Sweet 16, although there was an injury last year against Duke. I remember that because I had Houston. I like Cryer. I like this team. Do they have enough shooting, Jeff, outside of Cryer?
It's funny. Their percentages say they do. They just don't
Okay.
take a lot of threes. But Cryer's an elite three-point shooter. And the big difference is the kid Milos Uzan has been terrific. He transferred in this year. When I saw him in November, he was not good. And Kelvin said, he's like, we are not a good team. And they've been awesome since. I mean, dominating the Big 12. Think about that. Like, they've got one loss in the Big 12 where Kansas is basically, right. They're 10-8. They're 2 games over 500. It's amazing what Kelvin's been able to do. I'm with you. I don't know if they have enough offensive pop to win the whole thing. But again, I think, I don't think there's as big of a gap between Auburn and Duke and the rest of the country as people were saying there was up until, obviously Auburn loses one game and everybody's like, oh, they're not that good, right? They're not that good. They're not that good. They've beaten everybody this year. The only loss they really had before that, at Duke, which there's no shame in that one, and obviously Florida.
And Auburn, it looks like they've played maybe the toughest schedule in the country, according to net rating. And Duke is not top 50.
Nope.
Interesting. All right, Jeff Goodman, field of 68. Congrats, man. You're your own boss. That's as good as it gets. And, I'll let you tell the people about your move, shall we say. But it sounds like life is good for you, man.
Yeah, a lot less stress. A lot less stress. You listen, I love my time. I had a great run, Fox, CBS, ESPN. I mean, whoever thought somebody would put my ass on TV, right? Like, think about that.
Well, I didn't get to ask about him because I know you guys go way back. I know him. I was trying to get him on the pod, but Doug Gottlieb, obviously coaching now, doing a radio show. It's been a tough go in year one. Obviously, listen, you got to give guys some time to bake in this environment. Have you talked to Doug? Are you guys still friendly? Are you? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I love Doug. I love Doug personally. I get along great with him. We hosted a show for the last couple of years on Stadium. It's funny. He hit me up the other day. We were texting about something. He's like, haven't you watched us or something like that? Haven't you watched us? We're playing much harder. I'm like, Doug, you've won 3 games. No, I'm not watching you. I have to watch teams that are nationally relevant, you dumbass. Yeah. But I love Doug to death. I'm pulling for him. He's a brilliant basketball mind, Jason. He really is a brilliant basketball mind. And I think, he just needs to get enough talent. He got that job late. I think it was
the last job filled.
Yeah, and I've never had a situation like this. He got the job, and I'm not kidding, 25 coaches right within the first 24 hours called me for his number because they all wanted to play him. They all wanted to play him. Yeah, everybody wanted to play him last year.
Really?
Well, they knew. Number one, he got the job late.
Yeah.
So there's nothing left in the portal. Number two, he's going to try to balance coaching and a full-time, radio job, which you would know better than most on that one. Like, I get it. And I actually think the hardest part of doing it is you're not able to watch enough. Like, you're going to take away from both jobs because, you're going to take away a little bit from your, but he said in his story, in a story that was done recently on CBS, he's divorced. His 2 girls are older. They're in college. He's got one son who's probably about 13 or so. But again, Doug, man, if there's anybody that can juggle a million things, I've seen it firsthand, it's Doug Gottlieb.
Yeah, no, he's got an uphill climb for sure. It's funny that you talk about the juggling. So, I coach my kids in sports, and maybe 6 months ago, a local high school reached out to me and was like, hey, we might have a coaching job if you're interested. And I'm like, listen, this is not varsity, obviously, but I was like, my kids don't even go to high school. That would be too weird, but I do love hoops, and I do coach my kids, and we, have good players and we win a lot, but I can't imagine going through what he's going through, Jeff. I mean, you know what it's like starting your own business. Imagine starting a basketball team. You've got this huge audience, and you're getting your ass kicked, and then LeBron's taking shots. Adam Schefter's,
Schefter was wrong.
Some of that was brought on. He brought on some of that.
Schefter was wrong. Doug was right on that one. Sacramento State is not going to have 500 million, whatever it was.
Yeah,
right? Was it 500 or $50 million? $50 million in NIL? Come on.
But if he brought you on as an advisor, would your number one thing say stay off social media? Delete it from your phone? Focused on basketball?
No, I would just make him send me his tweets
before anything goes out.
Correct. And I'm not great either. I've gotten better. Here's the key for me, Jason. I don't go back at people very often anymore.
You used to. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, I used to kill people. Kill
Yeah.
people. The difference is, and you'll find this out. So my daughter covers women's college basketball full time now. So she's on Twitter, and she's a junior at Indiana, but she's got a full-time job in addition. She's on Twitter. So it forces me to be better because she gets a lot of the crap. They'll DM her, they'll go out, it just, I got to be careful. I got to be careful because I don't want her to see the dumb stuff I do also.
That's a good point. My kid came to me and was like, Dad, one of my buddies came up and was like, why's your dad beefing with Kevin Durant? And I was like, what? They were like, yeah, it's on YouTube. And I was like, oh, geez. So,
Right.
And again, my kid, it just doesn't impact my kids. They find it funny. But you're right. As someone who's like trying to be an actual journalist,
Yes.
that could be tough. Almost an impediment.
It's hard enough for a 21-year-old, girl to do this, get in this, like this is not, you better be thick skinned.
I'm surprised you told your kid to come into journalism, bro.
No, I didn't tell her. I told her not to.
Yeah,
I told her not to, but she didn't listen to me.
I don't even want my kids taking any like journalism class. Like, stay the fuck away from this field.
Well, it's gone in a bad direction. And the one thing I've done with Talia, my daughter, is try to teach her the right way to do it, right? Like the way that I learned to do it, right? 2 sources and make sure.
But there are no rules now, Yeah, well, anybody. It's
no
anything
accountability.
goes.
There's no accountability.
None whatsoever.
That's the problem. For me, it's like you can't be wrong. You can't. Now, again, I'll give my opinion. You know that I've always given my opinion and been unafraid of that. But it's always an opinion generally based on information. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. What's the big deal?
Happens.
There she is.
All right, Jeff Goodman, a field of 68. Enjoy the tournament, buddy. Good catching up.
Always, man. Great seeing you.